Live. Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 153 of the podcast. Maybe we're trying out a new platform this week. Today is Saturday, August the 10th, at least for the next 12 or 13 minutes anyway. So we're doing this thing right after the fight night ended for once because it was an ESPN Plus card, ended a little bit early. So we decided, let's get a jump on things. Let's get a head start. And by we, I, of course, mean myself and my trusty co-host all the way from pitch black New Jersey, Jeff, the Animal Wilson. Jeff, how you feeling on this Saturday evening, my friend?
Bill, I'm feeling phenomenal because it's been raining this week really hard. So now it's nice and warm out. It's not obscenely hot. There's a nice balance. That's why I got this like half hoodie with low sleeves because my chest is cold, but my arms aren't.
It's an interesting problem to have. Yeah, it's a different vibe doing this show at night. I feel like I have to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more somber, if you will. I'm also half asleep from watching this Fight Night 156 card from Uruguay. And the new format is weird too. Usually I'm just looking at your face and I don't see so much of me. And now for the people who watch the podcast on YouTube, which is not very many people, most of the people who consume the show are, of the audio variety. Now they're going to be able to see how much alcohol I actually drink throughout a broadcast, because usually when you talk on the Google Hangouts, the camera just switches to you and I can, down a beer in the meantime while you're going on a rant about something. But now the camera is on both of us. So now, we can't do things the way we used to, Jeff. You can't just stand up in your chair and like adjust your wedgies anymore. Or
yeah, dude, if you would start talking, that's when I would do that stuff. I mean, it's not like you could see me doing it, right?
Hey, maybe it'll get us more views. Maybe that's how we reel in the YouTube crowd that we've been missing for so long. I think we're like a commuter show though, because we always come out on Monday. Like a lot of people tell me they listen to the show like on their way to work and stuff Monday morning. So that's kind of cool. But in any case, for those of you on YouTube who have seen me with my half a beer that I have left here, this beautiful caramel colored beer, I was talking to Jeff earlier before the fight started. It came early this year, folks. I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about pumpkin beer season. I'm drinking a Gourd's Gone Wild by the Tampa Bay Brewing Company. It's a pumpkin ale. And of course, pumpkin beers don't actually taste like pumpkin. They taste like the spices that you put in a pumpkin pie. And that's why they're delicious, because they're a little bit sweet, not too sweet. I don't like the really overly sweet ones. Like some places will serve them with cinnamon and sugar and shit on the rim. I'm not into all that. I like a mild flavor, but I like red ales, and pumpkin beers are kind of similar to red ales. They have that like little bit of caramel sweetness to them. They're kind of heavy, so they're like a nice slow sipping drink for the fall. And usually they come out like end of August, early September. I feel like it's earlier and earlier each year. My theory is that they're looking to push the pumpkin beers earlier this year because there's a big hard seltzer craze going on right now, like the White Claws and all this stuff, which
yeah, I've noticed.
I haven't given those a try yet. Jeff, have you?
No, Bill. I prefer my hard liquors with no bubbles. If you want, drop a piece of ice in there. I like it on the rocks. Maybe a splash of water, but I'm not crazy about the carbonation.
I'm not either, but I feel like, as an alcohol-based podcast, we have an obligation to the people to at least, review these things. So maybe we'll pick up some and just do a live tasting, just because it's such a craze right now, and we can shit on it, or who knows, maybe we're closet hard water drinkers. We have a lot of hard water here in Florida. That's why I have a water softener in my garage. But it's a different kind of hard water. It's the kind that makes your skin all gross when you shower if you don't have a water softener. In any case, pumpkin beers.
Wait, Bill, what kind of water have I been showering in when I go visit you?
well, I told you I have a water softener, Jeff.
Oh, okay.
So basically, the water comes in and it's got like all kinds of minerals and stuff in it, and it runs through this big machine in my garage. I'll show it to you next time you're here, and it basically pushes it through like all this salt that takes all the minerals out of the water. So it takes the hardness out of it and it softens the water. The hardness being like the minerals and like I don't know, limestone, whatever the fuck is in water. It takes all that stuff out of it. That's why like tap water in Florida is kind of disgusting. Like I always love going back to New York and drinking the tap water. It tastes like almost sweet. But in any case, pumpkin beers, Jeff. This is the time of year you can just call me a basic bitch because I'm not into pumpkin spice a lot of things, but I do enjoy pumpkin beers. And I get ragged on a little bit for it, but I don't care because they're delicious. And I
Indeed,
like
they
drinking
are.
them. So it's pumpkin beer season. So maybe we'll do a different pumpkin beer every week. Starting out with Tampa Bay Brewing Company. You've been there, Jeff. You're a fan.
Oh, yes.
They make a nice pumpkin beer. They're local, of course, to Tampa Bay, which explains the name. And they have a location about 10 minutes from my house, and I frequent that brewery very often. They have some great food, and they always have a lot of good different rotating brews on draft. And I was surprised to see the pumpkin beers come out so early. But again, I think it's because of this hard water craze. The beer sales have plummeted this year. So they're struggling. Some guy in a board meeting was like sweating, and he was like, "Hey, what if we just put out the pumpkin beers the first week of August?" And somebody was like, "That's a great idea, Greg. Let's get them on the shelves. These hard waters are burying us." In any case, Jeff, I guess we could talk about some fights too. Valentina Shevchenko defends her flyweight championship against Liz Carmouche. Very uneventful fight. Credit to the champ. She did what she had to do to keep that strap around her waist. It was a clear-cut victory. All three judges had it 50-45. Liz Carmouche, the reason she got this shot, we were talking about it last week, because she has a win over Valentina 9 years ago, and she says that Valentina hadn't evolved at all since that time, which obviously has been proven to be false, but a very, very uneventful fight. I wouldn't say to the point of like Tyron Woodley versus Wonder Boy, but we're kind of treading on that territory, and I don't really think it's the fault of either fighter. I think it's just a weird style matchup, because I'm actually a fan of Liz Carmouche. I love her wrestling. I love her takedowns. I love her clinch work. She's my kind of fighter for sure. But for her style to work, she has to be able to close the distance. And if you close the distance with Valentina Shevchenko, you risk getting starched, knocked out cold, as we saw in her last title defense. And she couldn't pull the trigger. She couldn't close that distance. And then Valentina didn't want to close the distance on her end because she didn't want to risk getting tied up by Liz Carmouche, who's a great grappler, black belt on the ground. And then the fight went to the ground a couple of times. Valentina scored a couple of takedowns. Liz Carmouche like pulled rubber guard and was like digging her heel into Valentina's thighs and tying her arms up, but not really doing anything to try and sweep or try and get back up, just kind of stalling on the ground there. So I could see why a lot of people were disappointed in this fight, but at the end of the day, it's a 5-round dominant performance by the champ. Give me your thoughts on this main event here, Jeff.
Yeah, dude, I think that Valentina Shevchenko just went in there with the right game plan. I think that, like you said, she probably didn't want to be the one to get into close. One, because, like you said, Liz Carmouche is wrestling and grappling. And two, Valentina Shevchenko, her best fighting is done from distance. Her head kicks, she's got a really nice jab. So, despite being a Muay Thai player, I feel like some of her best work is from distance. And I felt like Valentina Shevchenko just went in there and was very cerebral, was very strategic. And, fights like that, they're not going to make for the most exciting fights. Tyron Woodley beat Stephen Thompson that second time, being very, very careful, fighting the right way. And, it was boring. His fight against Damian Maia was boring, but he fought in a way that would win him those fights, which is what Valentina did. And I don't think that there were too many spots that one could say were boring. The only time it was really boring, at least to me, was when they were tied up in Liz Carmouche's guard. Valentina was happy to just keep her base down because she knew that Liz Carmouche wasn't doing anything to advance positions. And I loved this one takedown that Valentina Shevchenko scored because Liz Carmouche is a very physically strong fighter. And I actually thought she had a bit of a strength advantage heading into this fight. But Valentina Shevchenko clinched her up, had her double underhooks and took her for a ride, dude. That was a beautiful spinning takedown. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Woodley and those fights too, because if you think about some of the champions who had the longest runs as champions, they had a lot of fights that were, not exciting and wouldn't go down on the record books as exciting fights, much like this fight tonight. But in the long term, they're going to go down as some of the greatest champions in history. George St. Pierre had some fights that were very unexciting. Anderson Silva had some fights where, Talis Latis, I was there in person for that fight. People were leaving the arena. I was able to walk down close and sit up close to the cage. And then when he fought Damian Maia, it was the same thing. One of the greatest champions ever. He'll go down same as George St. Pierre. And that's the way, once you achieve that championship, you got to hold on to it and worry about legacy. Demetrius Johnson, he had some very unexciting performances because he wanted to keep that winning streak going. I think he had the longest winning streak of any champion or something like that, most title defenses. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be Valentina Shevchenko's legacy. I don't think a lot of people were even watching this fight. It's not a card that's going to really bring in like the casual fans and make them stay home on a Saturday night to watch it. They'll probably watch some highlights the next day or listen to podcasts like this as opposed to actually watching it live. I don't think the numbers are going to be that great. And I don't think the UFC is concerned about that. They're concerned about getting into other markets like Uruguay where they've never been before. And exposing some of the local talent in South America, which we saw a lot of. Speaking of the South American talent in the co-main event, which had to be the fight of the night, Vicente Luque and Mike Perry, put on the kind of fight that you would expect from both of these guys. At the end of it, you could make the argument that Mike Perry won this fight. Vicente Luque coming away with the split decision. And once you see both of their faces at the end of the fight, it's pretty clear that Luque should have won the fight because Mike Perry's face was just smashed. And throughout the fight, it looked like both of them were getting bloodied up. But then you see when they both had their faces wiped off and Vicente Luque's face is still there and Mike Perry's face looks like a pizza that the cheese fell off of. Then
That's a very accurate description.
But not like a good pizza, like a cafeteria pizza, like the kind that comes in the plastic bag. Anyway, Mike Perry's a fucking warrior, man. He wound up taking Luque down, or Luque kind of fell at the end of that third round, and Luque put that guillotine on him and just squeezed all this blood out of Mike Perry's face. And all that pressure probably really increased the swelling in his face because he had the broken nose. His septum was down, buried at the bottom of his throat somewhere. And when he had Luque squeezing on his neck like that, and all the blood rushing and it's got nowhere to go, it's only got like one exit. It causes a lot of swelling, a lot of inflammation, and that's why his face looked really grotesque at the end of this fight. But give me your thoughts on this co-main event here, Jeff.
Yeah, dude, this was a really, really fun fight to watch. Bill, it doesn't have my pick for fight of the night, but a very close second. Really exciting fight from both of these guys. And honestly, Bill, I got so into it that at the end I couldn't tell you who won. I knew somebody got 2 rounds, I just didn't know who,
Hmm.
because I was just so excited. And man, Mike Perry is nothing if not a warrior, dude. He hung in tough. His nose is probably somewhere in between his ear and his eye,
Yeah.
because dude, it was just his nose was just smeared all over his face, dude. Um, to quote you, Bill, because you sent me this in a text, I think he's joining the Andre Arlovsky Nose of the Month Club. Dude, I started cracking up when you sent me that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but I put that one out on Twitter too.
yeah, dude. It was just such a fun fight. It was definitely one round one way. The next round was the other way, and then
Hmm.
the third round, um, it was just so hard. I would hate to have been a judge for this fight, because I honestly I did not know who won. I just it was like a pendulum just swinging back and forth, the momentum of this fight. And I don't think Mike Perry's stock goes down. I think Vicente Luque's stock definitely goes up. I think he made a very big statement. Mike Perry is a tough guy to really beat up like that. You don't see
Hmm.
him uh, get into. He's always in wars, but you don't see him come out looking like that, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last time we saw him really bloodied up like that was probably the Santiago Ponzinibbio fight a couple of years ago. I can see why some people thought Perry won this fight, because every time Perry exploded on Luque, the crowd kind of went nuts a little bit. But you have to realize that for a majority of the exchanges, Luque was landing more. He was splitting the punches, and when they would both throw a punch simultaneously, Luque was landing because of that reach advantage. He had Mike Perry backed up against the cage for a lot of the fight. And then, Mike Perry was exploding in small bursts. I wouldn't think it would be a robbery if the decision went to Perry,
Yeah.
but I think especially after seeing, Perry's face right at the end, the judges were like, "Oh fuck, there's no way that guy won." Even if they were thinking about giving him that third round, uh, there's no way we could give it to Pizza Face. But awesome fight from both guys. Like you said, nobody loses stock in this one. And Luque, a guy who showed a lot of composure in there. He's a guy who's shown susceptibility of falling into brawl type of fights. He did that in his fight with Brian Barberena and wound up getting a last minute knockout. But not really the way you want to build a career and rise to the top. You don't want to be known for getting into these brawls and being able to take a lot of damage. You want to be able to give a lot of damage without getting hurt. But at the same time, that's what entertains people. People want to see fights in the style of a Mike Perry and a Vicente Luque over Valentina Shevchenko and Liz Carmouche. And that's just the way it is. That's what sells. People want to see that. Okay, so Eduardo Garagori, the only Uruguayan. What's the term
It's
there, Jeff?
I think it's Uruguayan, Bill.
Uruguayan. I was right the first time. You should have stopped me there. You just let me carry on like this, Jeff. All right, so Eduardo Garagori getting the unanimous decision over the Peruvian. I knew that one. I kind of have to know that one. Humberto Bandone. And this was a good fight. Very, very competitive. I thought it was very close. Bandone landed a couple of key takedowns in this fight, but at the end of the day, I think it was the pressure and the volume of punches from the, what did we say? Uruguayan?
Uruguayan.
Uruguayan. All right. Yeah. Like Hawaiian, Uruguayan.
Yeah, there you go.
I got it. All right. Now I got it. It's registered. Give me your thoughts on this one, Jeff. Come on. Stop letting me struggle here.
Yeah, dude. I thought Bandenai really, I kind of had it for him because of the takedowns, but looking back, the takedowns really came at the end of the rounds,
Mhm.
and only in, I believe, the second round, he really didn't control his opponent here. What's his name? Garagori. He was able to pop back up at the end of the second round, but in that first round, I thought that Bandanai did a good job of holding him down. And like you said, man, the output was just too much for him to handle. And he didn't fight a bad fight. Um, Maybe I could have seen it going his way, but I don't think he got robbed here. I think the decision went the right way.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Uh, I think I saw it the same way. Like the takedowns kind of came at the last second in every round, and then it was kind of like a last stitch effort. And then you had the hometown judges too for the Uruguayan. Uruguayan. All
Yeah.
right, moving on. Let's get away from geography and shit like that. Volkan Ozdemir and Ilir Latifi, the fight that we thought we might never see, was actually a really exciting fight. And it was back and forth in the beginning, but then it was just a striking clinic by Ozdemir. And that one knee that he landed on Latifi was kind of like a sneaky knee. They just kind of slipped in there, like right up the middle, and wobbled Latifi. I mean, Latifi's a guy with a really hard head. He's a thick dude for this division. He's short and stocky, but we know he can take a punch and a knee and a kick and whatever else is in between. But just the patience and the precision of the strikes from Ozdemir were just too much for Latifi here. Even though Latifi had that one nice takedown where he dumped Ozdemir in that first round. I think if he maybe stuck to that a little bit more instead of trying to strike with him, it would have gone better for him. Like I said last week, that Latifi, Ozdemir has a susceptibility to wrestling, and Latifi has a habit of striking with guys who are better strikers than him, even though he has the wrestling to take down anybody in the division, with the exception of maybe like Daniel Cormier and John Jones. And maybe he could take those guys down too. I don't know. But give me your thoughts on this fight, Jeff.
Yeah, dude, I thought Latifi went about this all wrong, dude. He really should have been going for those takedowns a little bit more, especially in that first round. It was beautiful. He went into a single, turned Ozdemir a little bit, and then picked him up and just dumped him. And but I was just so impressed with Volkan Ozdemir, dude. He was patient. He was making Ilir Latifi work for those takedowns, especially after that first one. He didn't want any of that. He didn't want to get dumped again, and he really did a good job of stifling Latifi's takedown game. And those punches were just too much for Ilir Latifi, to the point where Ozdemir, once he got his rhythm going, you could see Ilir Latifi. He's not somebody who's in bad shape, but he was getting tired just because of the pace that Ozdemir was putting on him. And then he started picking his shots, dude. It was a very scary performance. I think this is the best performance we've seen out of Ozdemir in his time in the UFC, man. He was just very cerebral, very methodical, very calculated, and he went in there with the right game plan. And I think if he can keep fighting like this, he's definitely going to be in the title picture again real soon.
Yeah, I mean that's fair to say. I mean, it's hard to put him back in there because he got dominated by the champ, so easily. But there's a different champ now. Cormier was stripped or had to surrender his title. However you want to look at it. And now John Jones is the champ. I don't know if he stacks up any better against John Jones, who's a master at game planning. But yeah, he looked good. The biggest surprise to me of the whole night was that Ozdemir is only 29 years old. I thought this guy was like fucking 45. Every time I see him fight, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe this guy can make one last run at it. And then like when the tail of the team came up and it said he was 29, I'm like, he looks like somebody took that face app thing that ages you and they put it on Rory McDonald. And if you did that, it would be Volkan Ozdemir's face. Like, he was just born looking 45 years old, I think. But yeah, man, good for him. If he really is 29, then that's great. He's just coming into his prime. He's just coming into his prime right now. Latifi, it's not looking as good for him, who, he is 37, also looks 45. But yeah, Ozdemir, I don't know what you do next with him. I don't think you could put him like right for a title shot now, but definitely a top guy he's ready for. Maybe like a rematch with Anthony Smith. I don't know. I don't know what you do next with Volkan Ozdemir. But in any case, that happened, and it was his best performance. And yeah, good for him. Let's move on here. Rodolfo Vieira, UFC debut, getting the arm triangle choke over Oscar Peixoto, who's been around the UFC for a little bit, but it looked like he started to get a little tired in there. And then once Vieira got his arms around Peixoto's neck, it was all downhill from there. He put a nasty squeeze on his neck, and I don't know. You have any thoughts on this one, Jeff?
No, there was another submission just like it, and it wasn't super technical, but you get these dudes with really big shoulders, and they can just put a squeeze on that arm triangle where they're gonna make you very uncomfortable, to the point where you do tap, even if they don't have the choke locked up correctly. Well, we can move on, Bill, to what I thought was the fight of the night: Enrique Barzola versus Bobby Moffitt. Dude, this was an absolute war. Every round was either for one guy or the other. It ended up in a split decision. Both of these guys were a bloody mess after, and you didn't see too much grappling, and I was okay with it. They were just punching each other in the face, feeling each other out, getting their timing. Dude, a really fun fight. I think this was up there with Mike Perry and Vicente Luque's fight.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you don't have the nose factor at the end of Perry's fight to kind of punctuate it, then this one definitely would be a strong contender for fight of the night. And who knows, maybe they'll get their performance bonuses anyway. And it was interesting the way this fight went down, because Bobby Moffitt, known to be a grappler coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, very strong ground game, loves to grapple, mixes in his takedowns well, and it was actually Barzola who's going for most of the takedowns.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because he was the smaller guy, and you see him trying to out wrestle Moffitt, who's known to be the grappler. But I thought it was a great performance from Barzola. This was another one at the end of it. I was like, I don't know. It could be,
Yeah.
You never know with judges, and it's a new athletic commission and in another country, and who knows what could have happened. This was a really close one, but Barzola getting the split decision, and I'm not mad about it. I think he probably got the better of the exchanges. He did have a couple of takedowns there, so I thought he looked good. Another Peruvian guy. Somebody else who looked good, Gilbert Burns, stepping up on 2 weeks' notice, man. Stepping up on 2 weeks' notice and stepping up a weight class to take on an undefeated Alexei Kunchenko. So credit to Gilbert Burns, man. I love guys like this who will just fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. And Gilbert Burns is that guy. He's not the type to say no to a challenge. 2 weeks notice. All right, I'm in shape. You got to move up in weight. All right, I could do that. At least I don't have to cut weight. You got to fight a guy who's undefeated. Sure, fine. You have to go to Uruguay. All right. Well, when's my flight?
Yeah.
These are the kind of fighters that I'm a huge fan of. I think Gilbert Burns, one of the most underrated guys in the UFC. It'll be interesting if he decides to stay at welterweight, because he's a little bit undersized for the division, but you see what a great performance he could put on 2 weeks notice against a much bigger competitor, an undefeated competitor in Kunchenko, who didn't fight with as much pressure as he normally does. Maybe he was worried about if he pressured Burns too much, he would be able to get the takedown, and Burns had some expertly timed takedowns in this fight. There was one time when Kunchenko threw like a low kick and Burns just put him on his back like instantly. It was one of the most beautifully timed takedowns I've seen in a long time. Did you catch this fight, Jeff?
Yeah, dude. I'm a fan of Gilbert Burns as well, especially after his performance against I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's a judo black belt, the Dominican dude. I'm sorry, Cuban dude. It'll come back to me. But regardless, yeah, dude, Gilbert Burns so good at mixing it up, man. He's got power in his hands. We've seen that. But he's so technical with his takedowns and his timing is ridiculous, man. And that's one of my favorite things about him is the way he can, you know, throw a couple of punches, then change levels. And when you're trying to respond, you end up on your back, just like you said. And we saw that in this fight. Personally, I'd like for him to stay at 155, but I wouldn't be mad at him if he stayed at 170. He looked good there tonight.
Yeah, man. And his brother just made it to the UFC as well. He was on the Contender Series on Tuesday night. Herbert Burns, probably the only brothers named Gilbert and Herbert who will never get bullied by anybody for being named Gilbert and Herbert. But yeah, he looked good too, man. And he went up against, I think, another black belt on a Contender Series and submitted him. And I think he's a 145 pounder, but he's like a longer and leaner looking Burns. Herbert and Gilbert. All right. Then we had Cyril Gain with the arm triangle choke over Rafael Pessoa, who looks like a cross between Fabricio Verdum and Roy Nelson. This was the other arm triangle choke you were talking about, Jeff, where it was a little less technical. It was across the chin, but big strong guy is squeezing on your jaw like that. It feels like your jaw is just going to explode. It's super painful. And Pessoa, tapping there. It was a risky takedown that Pessoa went for. When you go for these overhook type takedowns in MMA, there's so much momentum. It's easy to get reversed and stuff. Like it's stuff that works in judo a lot because you have the gi to kind of hold on to and anchor yourself with. But without the gi present, there's so much more space to roll and to, reverse and things like that. So it's tough to throw people, without a gi, unless it's something that you're used to doing. And so Gain coming out on top of that exchange, and they kind of flipped a couple of times in the air and came out on top, got the choke. It wasn't, technically correct, but if it gets a tap, it gets a tap. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like you said, I don't know if the fence helped because that takedown that Pessoa went for was right up against the fence. So Gan didn't fall on his back. He kind of fell on his butt, and his back was against the cage. So, he couldn't really be held down there and kind of just use that momentum to take Pessoa's legs out from under him. So I don't know if that would have been different if they'd been, say, in the middle of the octagon. But like you said, he went for a good choke, and those big shoulders definitely help, no matter if you have it on the neck or the jaw. So he probably just had such a tight squeeze that this dude Passau, who is a black belt in his own right, so no slouch there.
Yeah, it's too bad he couldn't have his black belt on over his fight kit to keep his pants up, because his butt crack was on display for all of Uruguay. That was kind of funny. I just kind of want to breeze over the rest of the card, Jeff. I know you didn't catch a lot of the prelims, but Marina Rodriguez getting the unanimous decision over Tecia Torres, who is now on a 4-fight losing streak, believe it or not. Tecia Torres, someone we were talking about contending for the title possibly a couple of years ago. But if you think about it too, the last 3 people she lost to, 4-fight losing streak now, but the 3-fight losing streak before that was, the current champ Jessica Andrade, the former champ Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and the current championship contender Wiley Zhang. So, if you look at it resume wise, they're not all bad losses. And I believe she went the distance with all of them. But Marina Rodriguez, did what she had to do, pressured Tecia Torres and got the unanimous decision. Rogerio Bundoran with a TKO victory over Raul Pieva. This is one of the worst cuts I've ever seen. This picture was going out around the internet. So Pieva basically got cut like right across his eyebrow, and it just opened up split his eyebrow in half, and it looked like I don't know if you know the movie Little Shop of Horrors, Jeff, but it's about this Venus flytrap that basically becomes like a monster and starts eating people, and
Yep.
the inside of its mouth, like when it opens its mouth, is like all red inside, and that's what Paiva's face looked like. His he just had a crevice split open. It looked like a giant mouth on his forehead. It was a really nasty cut. Very appropriate stoppage by the doctors in Uruguay there. Thoughts on anything so far, Jeff? You want me to keep cruising through here?
Yeah, dude, I actually saw pictures of that cut up on Twitter, and it was looking nasty, dude. Like, it looked like this dude's eyelid was gonna come off if the fight had continued. So good stoppage by the ref and the doctors. Good eye on that. And Bill, I believe Little Shop of Horrors. Don't quote me on this, but I'm not sure if it was a play before it was a movie. Like, wasn't it a musical first or something?
Yeah, I do believe it. If it wasn't before, then it was after. Like it was
Mhm.
it was either a film adaptation of a musical or vice versa. But either
Mhm.
way, it had a lot of music in it. Rick Moranis, um, and who's the other guy? What's that guy's name?
Who, Bill Murray? Is that who you're
No,
thinking of?
no, not Bill Murray. Um, the other guy with the gray hair. Fuck, he's one of
Um,
my favorite actors too. Steve Martin. Steve Martin.
mm,
All right. Sorry, folks. A lot of you probably yelling at your car stereos right now. Chris Gutierrez, very close split decision over Geraldo de Freitas. That was a really close fight. Could have gone either way. Alex de Silva Coelho got a unanimous decision over Rodrigo Vargas. That was a dominant performance. Coelho basically had Vargas's back for the entire first round and just put on a grappling clinic. It couldn't really finish him because they stayed relatively dry for a lot of the fight, which makes it easier to fight off rear naked chokes and stuff like that. And then Veronica Macedo getting a 1 minute armbar victory over Polyana Viana in the first fight of the night. So yeah, there were a lot of lulls in this card, but overall, looking back on it, we had a lot of bright spots here. Definitely Ozdemir's performance, Mike Perry's pizza face, the domination by the champ Valentina Shevchenko, the Barzola and Moffitt fight, Gilbert Burns stepping up in weight. I always like to take away the positives. When there's a lot of people complaining about a card and how boring a lot of the fights were, I like to immediately try and remember all the positive things that came out of it. And I think we have a lot of things, a lot of positives to take away from Uruguay. Any closing, encompassing thoughts on this card, Jeff?
yeah, honestly, Bill, I wasn't super excited heading into the card, but once I tuned in, man, I thought the fights were really, really exciting. I thought that the main event, I thought that, like I said, Valentina fought the fight she needed to win. And, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. GSP had his share of boring fights. Anderson Silva did. The most, or if not all of Demetrius Johnson's fights were pretty boring. Um, Maybe except the first title fight against um, John Dodson and the one where he got that armbar, the like suplex into the armbar. That one
The
was
Ray
pretty cool.
Borg fight, yeah.
Yeah. All his other title defenses were boring though. But those are the guys who are going to live on in our memories as some of the greatest champions of all time. So you got to do what you got to do. So everybody who thought that fight was boring, shut up and quit asking so many questions. How many UFC belts have you defended? Zero.
That's true. That's true. I guess I didn't hear anybody who has defended a UFC belt complain about the fight being boring. So there's that. Um, anyway, speaking of UFC belts being defended, we got a pay-per-view coming up on August 17th. So that's next Saturday, UFC 241. Before we talk about that, though, Jeff, I want to give a quick shout out to Erin Harp, who's a part of our Gracie Tampa network here. She trains at Gracie Tampa South. She fought for Invicta on Friday night, made her Invicta debut. She won a split decision. It was kind of a bullshit split decision because it should have been unanimous. She very clearly won the first and third rounds in dominant fashion. Now 2-0 as a professional, very close to getting her black belt under Matt Arroyo. So obviously a lot of jiu-jitsu credentials there. Very bright future as an MMA fighter. She had Billy Quarantillo in her corner, friend of the show. Also trains in the Gracie Tampa network, obviously. So big congratulations to Erin Harp on winning her Invicta debut. So hopefully she'll stick with the promotion, never fight in Missouri again, where the athletic commission is very wonky. There was a lot of crazy decisions in Invicta last night where there was one where they even announced the wrong girl as the winner. And then the girl, they interviewed her and gave her she gave like a very heartfelt speech about winning a fight. And then they were like, actually you didn't win. Sorry. So
No.
whatever whatever the opposite of a shout out is, that's what I give to the Missouri State Athletic Commission, because they're fucking
Damn.
awful. It seems like they don't know their ass from their elbow. But big shout out to Erin Harp there. Any thoughts on the Invicta stuff, Jeff?
Yeah, congrats to your girl, man. That's awesome. But yeah, Invicta, let's get your shit together, bro.
Yeah, let's never go back to Missouri. How about that? So, there's some athletic commissions, man, that are just scary. If you're a young fighter, looking to build your record, you can't play it safe sometimes. You can't trust these athletic commissions, and that's a sad thing. And some of these athletic commissions, you don't even want to go because there's so much red tape, and like they want so much extra paperwork with your medicals, or like they won't let you fight for some stupid bullshit. Like I always think of the New York example where that girl couldn't fight because she had chapped lips. So there's there's so much bullshit out there like this if you're a young fighter that can really affect your career. And a bad decision, if you get a loss early on in Invicta and it's one of your first 5 fights, that hurts, that stings, that sticks with you. But luckily, Erin wasn't a victim of that. She still walked away with the victory, even though it should have been a unanimous decision. All right, so let's move on. Anaheim, California, August 17th, UFC 241, a rematch between heavyweights. The champ, DC, Daniel Cormier, taking on the former champ, who's defended the heavyweight title more than anybody, a whopping 3 times, Stipe Miocic. Give me your thoughts on this rematch here, Jeff.
Dude, I'm so excited, man. I thought the first fight was really good from both sides. And I'm excited. DC's undefeated at heavyweight. Stipe has one of the most successful reigns as a heavyweight champion ever in the UFC. We've never seen someone defend the belt 3 times in a row at heavyweight. So it's going to be really, really interesting. They both match up well. They're both very skilled strikers, very good wrestlers. But I think DC has a little bit more of an advantage, being former captain of the Olympic team. And the biggest factor here is they've already fought each other once. They kind of know what to expect. And in Stipe's case, he knows what he's needed to work on. He's had some time away from the cage to kind of go back to the drawing board, as it were. So I'm really excited to see what Stipe is going to do differently this time around.
Yeah, for sure. And Cormier using some expert level clinch manipulation in their first fight, pulling Stipe in one direction, right into a big punch, and getting that KO victory. Definitely carries a lot of power at heavyweight. Still, really small for that heavyweight division, but that's never mattered his whole career. He's beaten guys he never should have beaten. Winning the Strikeforce Grand Prix, stepping up last minute as a replacement, and then winning the whole heavyweight Grand Prix, beating guys like Josh Barnett and picking him up and dumping him on his ass. He's done things that he shouldn't do his whole career. and he's built his legacy on that. And Stipe is a guy who, people have slept on him his whole career too. Nobody gave him a chance against Ngannou, and he dominated him. Like, people were scared for him taking that fight. He went in there, got in his face for 25 minutes, and kept putting that monster on his back, and kept standing up with him at the beginning of every round, and did what he had to do to get the victory. He really fights like a true champion, and he's been holding out for this rematch because he felt like he deserved it as the winningest or most defenses as a heavyweight champion ever. But at the same time, Cormier has been a little bit more active in the meantime, while Stipe has been kind of sitting on the bench. He had a daughter in the meantime, which definitely affects like training and everything like that. He's still a firefighter, but that's never been a factor in the past. So, and we're gonna see a Stipe who's like looking for revenge. We're gonna see a man on fire here, no pun intended. So yeah, I think this is an awesome main event, and I think we have a really awesome co-main event that has a lot of history leading up to it, and that's Nate Diaz and Anthony Pettis. And Jeff, I can't believe that Nate Diaz is actually going to fight until Bruce Buffer announces his name. I just can't. It's been so long. I just can't believe he's getting back in there. I'm so excited to see him fight again. I've always been a big fan of Nate Diaz. I've always been a big fan of Anthony Pettis too, and a lot of history here because Anthony Pettis has beaten Nate Diaz's teammate Gilbert Melendez, and Nate Diaz tried to call Anthony Pettis out when Pettis was huge and on Wheaties boxes and stuff like that, and Nate Diaz always felt like that was kind of undeserved because a lot of the hype came off that one kick from WEC in the championship fight. I think it was the last fight ever in WEC when he had the Showtime kick where he jumped off the cage, kicked Benson Henderson. So because a lot of that, he got on the Wheaties box and he got all this recognition and ESPN and all this stuff. And Nate Diaz is like, well, who is this guy? He hasn't beaten anybody in the UFC. Like, why is he getting all this stuff? I've been here forever. I'm the Ultimate Fighter champion. And, he's bitter because Pettis beat his teammate. So he was trying to get fights with him then. And it just never came together. He said Pettis was ducking him. So, Pettis is kind of on an upswing now since moving up. He's coming off that knockout win over Wonder Boy, which was a huge comeback and a huge upset win for him. I think it's the perfect time to make this fight. I think it's an awesome fight. And I just hyped myself up even more by talking myself through it. Give me your thoughts on this co-main event next week, Jeff.
Bill, that's all well and good. This fight sounds super exciting, but like you said, they got to close that cage door first, and Nate Diaz needs to be in there. It's the last couple fights, he's been ducking interviews, not showing up, and then last minute, he doesn't even want to fight. So I don't know, dude. I don't trust it. And I don't trust this other fight that's on the card. Bill, for the fourth time, we're going to try this. Romero versus Paulo Costa.
Uh-huh.
I'm excited for this fight, but I'm not gonna. I can't get my hopes up.
Yeah.
They close that cage door, and both men are inside. This is the fourth time we're trying to make this fight, Bill. I don't know if it's gonna happen.
Yeah, this is like it's like the Tony and Khabib of the middleweight division.
Yep.
Yeah, we've wanted this fight for so long. I love the meme that's out there that's like Yoel Romero is going to fight Paulo Costa, and then it says USADA with the colon, and then it's a picture of Sandra Bullock from that movie where she's blindfolded. That's a funny one. I would pull it up and share it with you guys on YouTube, but I haven't figured out how to use this StreamYard platform yet. I'll work on the screen sharing and all that stuff. I'm a radio guy, guys. I'm not into all this technology and shit, but if somebody wants to give me a tutorial, I'm open to it. But yeah, that's an awesome fight. We got Sadiq Youssef, Gabriel Benitez. That's a banger. Derek Brunson and Ian Heinisch. That's a fun fucking fight. John Makdessi and Devontae Smith. That's a banger and a half. You got two explosive strikers there. Corey Sandhagen and Rafael Assunção on the prelims. Manny Bermudez, Casey Kennedy, Drakkar Klose, and Christos Giagos. What else we got here? That's about it. But man, those prelims and that main card is fucking fire here, Jeff, in Anaheim, California. What caught your attention the most out of all the things I just rattled off there?
Yeah, dude, I'm really liking that Derek Brunson versus Ian Heinisch fight, man. I think that's definitely going to be a war. Both of these guys mix it up really well. Very good at multiple areas of MMA. So I think that one's definitely going to be a sleeper on this one. I think that has fight of the night potential.
Yeah, Derek Brunson is a guy. A lot of his performances you can't really measure his skill set with them because when he fights emotionally or he comes running across the cage, that's when he gets caught. But when he fights patiently and technical and uses his wrestling, Derek Brunson is a dangerous dude. But Ian Heinisch is a guy we've seen is able to mix things up really well. He's on a hot streak lately. We got a bunch of guys coming from who came from the Contender Series on this card, so we're really seeing a lot of talent coming from there. Ian Heinisch being one of them, Devontae Smith, Sadiq Yusuf. We got a bunch of guys. So Heinisch coming off that great performance against Antonio Carlos Jr., where he just wore him out and made his jiu-jitsu basically worthless. And before that, he had the win over Mutante. So. And the other thing I keep forgetting too is that Paulo Costa is undefeated. He's 12-0. He's getting in there. He's getting in there against Yoel Romero. Finally, maybe. So I don't know, Jeff. I'm really excited for this card, and we got a first time viewer here, Tommaso Mark. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here on YouTube. We usually don't record on Saturday Night Live.
Well, what's the competition? We got to deal with SNL. Is that still a thing? Do people watch that?
I don't know, man. I think they take the summers off. But Mark asked, who goes down first, Yoel or Paulo? You want to take that one, Jeff?
Oh, damn. Already, the first question, it's a hard one. Damn, I can't remember the last time Yoel Romero was on his back, like in a grappling position on his back.
Mm-hmm. It could be a knockdown.
Yeah, but I'm saying like with somebody like in his guard, damn, who goes down first? Yoel Romero's just so explosive, dude. And I love Paulo Costa. I think he's an awesome fighter, but I think Paulo Costa's butt hits the ground first.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but just because Yoel Romero is he's so explosive and hard to read sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I'll go the other way with it only because Yoel Romero is a notoriously slow starter. He explodes in that third round every time, with Chris Weidman. There's a couple other examples, and that's how he was as a wrestler on the Cuban Olympic team as well. He would let guys score points on him early on, and then he would explode for tech falls like later in the later periods as a wrestler, and he carried that over to MMA as well. So I feel like Costa is the guy who's going to get off to a quicker start. But as the fight goes on, I think this is going to be a really competitive fight. So I don't know. If I had to pick one, like flip a coin, I would say maybe Romero will go down first, but then come back later in the fight. Hope that answers your question. So we got a lot of fun fights on this card, Jeff. I'm really looking forward to it. It's gotten to the point where, there's so much MMA action going on. There's cards like almost every day. Now we're deep into the Contender Series. We had Invicta on Friday. We had UFC. There was bare knuckle boxing going on tonight. I didn't even watch that. It's such a great time for combat sports. It's like you almost forget like cards like this are coming up. It used to be, like a pay-per-view, dating myself here, but remember the days when there would be a pay-per-view like every 3 months.
I don't remember those days.
Well, you're a lot younger than me, Jeff. So yeah, it used to be like oh man, I can't wait for, Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell 5 months from now. And in the meantime, there's nothing else. And then like the Ultimate Fighter came out and you actually had stuff to watch. And now it's like there's so much. It's like, you could probably watch something every day of the week if you count like all the local promotions and everything like that. Yeah, anyway, this was cool. I like this new platform here. We're using StreamYard, which broadcasts onto YouTube. So I like the fact that people can interact. We never had the comments on before, so this is the first time we actually got comments while we were recording live. So that's a pretty cool thing. So maybe that's something we can keep up in the future. So turn on your notifications if you follow us on YouTube, so that you know we're going live. We usually record like Sunday morning, Sunday afternoons. Like I said, most people are all about the audio version of the podcast, but if you are listening on audio, please subscribe, please share the episodes, please leave us a review. If you leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and we see it, also like tag us on social media when you leave a review. If you leave a funny review, as long as you give 5 stars, we'll read it on the air. And then yeah, there's that. And then Mark had another question. We might as well give Mark a
Yeah.
might as well give Mark another.
Also, Mark,
Yeah,
you rock for listening to us live. We're happy to answer your questions. What do you got?
he wanted to know if either of us scored the fight tonight for Perry over Luque. And we talked about this earlier, Mark, but I know you joined a little later in the show. At the end of the fight, we were both just so stunned. That was such a great fight that we thought it could have gone either way. But after, going back and thinking about it, we could see why people did score it for Perry. But he was backing up a lot, and in a lot of the striking exchanges, he was coming up short because of the reach disadvantage. And then just the way he looked at the end of the fight was really what did it, and put Luque over the top there. And plus, getting all the blood squeezed out of his face. That didn't look so well in the judge's eyes, I think. So that's the way we saw that one. Did I cover all that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Sorry, I'm opening up YouTube on my phone so I can see the question.
Oh yeah. I have it in front of me because I can see the platform here. I guess I'll just have to feed you the questions from now on, Jeff. We got to work this out. We got so many kinks to work out of the show. But anyway, thanks for your questions, Mark. We appreciate it. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We appreciate everybody who's been leaving us reviews. So again, if you leave us a funny review and still give 5 stars, we'll read it on the air. Give you a little shout out here. Maybe we'll get the YouTube thing going here, Jeff. We've been audio exclusive for so long. It's time we started interacting with the people when we record live. Maybe we should start doing Saturday nights more. Maybe that's the hot time slot. In any case, if you guys want to get a hold of Jeff, it's at @animal_Wilson on Twitter and Instagram. Jeff now has an Instagram, so give him a follow on there. And you guys know how to get a hold of me. It's at MMA on the Rocks, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can send me an email, mmaontherocks@gmail.com. YouTube, we're on the YouTube. And you can visit our website, mmaontherocks.com. We'll put up some weekly articles there, biographies of fighters who have been on the show that we've interviewed, a lot of fun stuff on there, a lot of short clips of interviews we've done in the past and show highlights and everything like that. YouTube page has a video of Mike Perry dancing his last fight. That's a fun one. And that's it, man. Jeff, you got anything else you want to get off your chest?
Yeah, Tommaso, Mark, thanks for tuning in, and you have a great night as well, brother.
Awesome. So I guess you can see the questions now.
Yeah, have my phone.
we need a better system for this. Yeah, thanks, Mark, for tuning in. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Until next time, cheers, everybody. Goodbye. And